guys, today we have more of a traditional video as like the first one, but this one is a US Vice President's tier list. So yeah, we're gonna be basically covering all the US Vice Presidents in order, S to F. Remember, this is just their actions as Vice President, not their actions we're going to be looking at their before, but not really their after, or their eventual presidency, as some of them did become president eventually. So yeah, that's basically the parameters of what we're going to be doing today. Always put your opinions in the comments, like and subscribe if you feel so compelled. Yeah, so first off we have John Adams, and he was basically Washington's agreeer, Washington leaned Federalist. Adams was extremely active in the Senate, whereas like the two responsibilities of the VP are the Senate, presiding over the Senate, and breaking ties in the Senate, and also certifying the next presidential election results. So Adams, I think he cast the second most amount of tie-breaking votes, 29, whereas some of them didn't even cast one, some VPs. So President of the Senate, he actually inserted himself into a situation where he wasn't breaking a tie in the Senate, which kind of violated the VP title. But yeah, overall, he was a pretty good VP. Just for his, I don't feel like I'm going to knock him for his insertion of himself in that. We're going to put him in A. I would put him in B. I don't know. You could plausibly put him in B. So next is Thomas Jefferson. He was under Adams. As a VP, he composed the parliamentary processes and papers that like contain basically how the Senate proceedings should occur. So basically, he was an engineer behind the duties of the VP. I'm gonna put him in B tier, I think, as a VP, because then again, he wasn't as active as Adams was in the Senate. Aaron Burr. So he was the first to employ the spoils system, whereas when he got elected, everyone who helped him along his journey in his campaign, basically he put them in governmental roles, and he was unpopular and kind of just wanted power for himself. Didn't really strongly believe in anything. We're gonna put him in F. Yeah. He was corrupt, kicked out after one term, because Jefferson preferred George Clinton. George Clinton, he prevented the recharter of the first bank. He was a protector of rights, I guess. Wasn't as active as, again, John Adams, but then again, at this point, the VP wasn't very active at all. George Clinton, definitely an improvement. I'm going to put him at B tier. Next, we have Elbridge Gerry. And Jerry, he created the gerrymandering system, because he had the first gerrymandered district. He refused to sign the Constitution because it lacked the Bill of Rights, so he was a stalwart defender of rights, which I like. But then again, gerrymandering, it's a process that's still around, and it's very intensely harmful. I'm going to put him at D. So Daniel Tompkins is next. He wasn't very active as a vice. He didn't oversee Senate proceedings very well at all. Financial issues, a lot of unused potential. I'm going to put him in the D tier. He basically let Monroe do everything. Monroe did a good job at that, but next we have John C. Calhoun. he was actually elected under John Quincy Adams, even though he was a Democrat and Adams was a Republican, a Democratic Republican or Federalist later. He kind of switched between the two. But John Quincy Adams was staunchly anti-slavery, whereas John C. Calhoun was very pro-South, very aggressively slavery. Strong Democratic figure, even though he later was a vice under Jackson, and they had tiffs, and Jackson later removed him from his vice president in favor of Martin Van Buren. So he just kind of clashed with people, vetoed important bills, staunch slavery supporter. He thought slavery was a necessary, some South supporters thought slavery was a necessary evil. He actually advocated for it and thought that it improved the U.S. Didn't even have the benefit of like Andrew Jackson, whereas Andrew Jackson actually did some good things. He just had a messed up ideology and vetoed things. Active as a vice president, I'll give him that, but in the wrong sort of way. Martin Van Buren comes up next. He's very politically driven, strongly side with Andrew Jackson. But you know, he had his positive things to his to his presidency, of course, and to his vice presidency, of course. He was a strong Senate leader, so I'm gonna put him in D tier. Just kind of an average figure. This is where I put him for president too. Below average figure. Next we have Richard Mentor Johnson. He was the VP of Van Buren. And Richard Mentor Johnson actually ran away during the financial panic during Van Buren's presidency, to secure his own financials instead of helping, kind of a Ted Cruz situation, rather than he's tried to secure his own financials instead of helping things out at the Senate where he should have been. Inactive in Senate, I'm gonna put him in the F tier. He didn't really fulfill the VP stuff and served his own interests. John Tyler, willing to take charge after Harrison's death. Bad president, but you know, he probably wouldn't have done that much bad stuff as a VP. He probably just would have been an average VP. So for that reason, I'm gonna put him at D. He would have been fine. Next we have George Dallas. George Dallas was a very strong expansionist. He was self-centered, wanted to increase his own power. Very divisive figure. I appreciate that. Much like Polk. Kind of a Polkish figure, but you know, Polk actually had some integrity, whereas Polk he believed in what he was saying, and he wanted to, you know, he was trying to serve the American people the best he could, and George Dallas was just, I believe, serving his own wants. So I'm gonna put him in the F tier. Actually, here, okay. So next we have Millard Fillmore. So he was with Zachary Taylor, and he was very involved and believes in keeping government for the people. Fought against the expansion of slavery, but only for a couple of years. You know, wasn't really an abolitionist, but fought against expansion. Good guy. Not as active of a vice president. Couldn't really execute his goals, but I think he was a pretty good, above average vice president. William King. So he was with Franklin Pierce. Didn't do anything to stop the North and the South from fighting each other. He left weeks after. He was close with actually former President next President James Buchanan. Many presume that they were in a relationship. You know, this is William King. Didn't really do anything, and didn't really favor expansion, and I don't know. We're gonna put him D tier, because I really don't know that much about him. John Breckinridge. Popular, but chose the South and chose to support the interests of the South at a point when the country needs to stay together, or not really even stay together, but you know, as a VP, he really supported some of the bad decisions James Buchanan made, which escalated the Civil War, and we are going to put him in F tier. Yeah, he rejected the Constitution in his final hours, John C. Breckinridge. So that's pretty inexcusable as someone who's serving the Constitution. F tier. Not a great showing from the vice presidents of this time. Not a great showing from the presidents of this time either. So kind of makes sense. Up until Hannibal Hamlin, with Abraham Lincoln, a radical Republican, staunch abolitionist, but he didn't really do that much. Strong advocate of the Emancipation Proclamation. I'm going to put him in B tier. It really didn't construct anything. Abraham Lincoln really just took charge under his own thing, his own presidency. So Hannibal Hamlin couldn't really get in there, but he had some good ideas and tried to help where he could. So I'm going to put him in B tier. Andrew Johnson, in strong contrast to Abraham Lincoln, didn't do anything, opposed Lincoln, vetoed things, basically when he had to tie-break things, not much respect for his position, use it for his own power, showed up drunk to his speech, to get inducted, what's that called, I forget the word, it's so dumb, and he was stubborn and obstinate, and, you could tell if he became president, he would be a bad president, which he was, possibly possibly the second worst, if not the worst president we have ever had. But we're not going off of that, we're going off as VP, but still a terrible VP, F tier. Schuyler Colfax is next, founder of the Republican Party. Opposed slavery strongly in Congress, but got caught up in all kinds of scandal, and I believe, much like Spiro Agnew, set the tone for Ulysses S. Grant's presidency as one of corruption. Ulysses S. Grant wasn't guilty of that corruption, it was all the people around him, Schuyler Colfax included. So it's a shame. Schuyler Colfax, he had a hard life, but kind of paved the way for corruption. We're going to put him in C tier just because I feel like the good cancels out the bad with him. He left quickly, Henry Wilson, like Colfax, he was very opposed to slavery. Highly intelligent guy, but he really didn't do that much either. I'm gonna put him in the C tier up there, the two Grant boys. More integrity, much more integrity than Schuyler Colfax, but actually did less than him. William Wheeler is next. He was honest, transparent under Hayes, worked well with Hayes, pragmatic civil rights leader, not very corrupt compared to the rest of the Republican Party at the time. He left after one term because he wanted to. He thought he had served his country well, and I'm gonna put him in A tier. I think although the Hayes administration was troubled, I think he was a great VP. Chester Arthur. So, he was under Garfield. He was kind of... James Garfield was opposed to corruption and the Republican Party at the time because a lot of them just, fed into the interests of their buddies and their cronies. But, he was like, hey, what are we about? The Republican Party, we're about civil rights for everyone. Making this a country a better place for people to live, the common man, not really the common man, the Republican Party, that was more the Democratic Party at the time, but, just civil rights, for the the ones who don't have a voice. We shouldn't be corrupt, and, we need to support free trade and that sort of thing, not imposing tariffs all the time. So, but Chester Arthur was one of the more stalwart, less supportive of James Garfield's views, but I feel like he didn't jump the gun and try to get in there as soon as James Garfield got shot. He waited until he was dead and then slowly regained power. Stayed tried to stay honest during his vice presidency, which was very short, to James Garfield's vision, and he did not want to jump in there to seem like he wanted power. I'm going to put him in the C tier with those other men. So, yeah. Thomas Hendricks is next. He was under Grover Cleveland, and he died shortly after. Kind of a crony capitalism kind of guy. Agreed with Grover Cleveland on humble foreign policy. But, can't say that much about him. Crony capitalism, I really dislike it. I'm going to put him in D tier. I really don't think he was that bad. He's on the cusp of C and D tier. We're actually going to put him in C tier. Why not? Levi Morton, another stalwart Republican, very in with Conkling, who was kind of a corrupt guy in the Republican Party at the time, not very strong under Harrison at all. He is going in the D tier. Adlai Stevenson the first. So, he was under Grover Cleveland's second term. He was a very enthusiastic Senate leader. He saw the VP as a way to, make a change, much like Walter Mondale, that kind of thing. Respected the position. Pragmatic, respectful, and he enjoyed his duties. Day-to-day, got along well with Grover Cleveland. I'm going to put him in the B tier, actually. So, next, let's put Adlai Stevenson in the A tier. I like Adlai Stevenson first. Next, we have Garrett Hobart. Very popular at the time, charismatic guy, under McKinley, who I generally disagree with. But, my main thing about him is he used the tie-breaking vote to not give Philippines self-governance. So they could have had self-governance, but he cast a tie-breaking vote that made them not. And he may have just been serving his party's interests and McKinley's interests. Antitrust guy like Roosevelt was. I don't know. I don't want to put him in F because he was active and, a charismatic guy. I'm going to put him in D tier. I really can't get over what he did with the Philippines. I think that was a terrible move. So Theodore Roosevelt is next, as a vice under, I believe, McKinley also. He wanted much more power. He really didn't do much as a VP. He later did a lot as a president. It's kind of average, I guess. We're gonna put him in the C tier. Next, we have Charles Fairbanks. He was under Theodore Roosevelt. He was a nominee in the election of 1916. He was against a lot of the Square Deal policies. Served cronies and basically tried to stop Teddy Roosevelt in what he was doing. Wasn't very effective at his job. Although he had some nice whiskers, we're going to put him in F tier. And also very generally imperialistic guy. Along with this fellow, he wasn't very supportive of Philippine self-governance, so do not appreciate that man very much. James Sherman, so he is next. He was VP to Taft. Kind of like an opposite, but like mild opposite to Taft. Worked well with him, pragmatic. But he died in office. Last president to do so. We're gonna give him the C tier. So yeah, Thomas Marshall is next. He was under Woodrow Wilson. He had a progressive agenda. I believe he did support the income tax, which was a very strong issue at the time, which I disagree with, but, better president. He would have been a way better president than Woodrow Wilson. He was a humorous, charming guy, anti-eugenics. opposed to capital punishment, rallied support for Liberty Bonds during the World War One. He was reluctant going into World War One. You know, if Wilson would have listened to him more and given him more of a position, I think that he would have been a better president. I'm not so sure how his civil rights were. I hope they weren't the same as Wilson's. But, you know, A or B, on the cusp of those two, because, you know, Democratic Party at that time was not my cup of tea. But, you know, he had a generally progressive agenda. I do agree with a majority of what he was saying. So, yeah. Calvin Coolidge, under Harding, inactive, you know, also very silent, which served him well as a president, not very well as a VP. Rather dull. You know, I don't really know that much about him. He wasn't a D because he didn't really do anything bad. I'd say he's a C. You know, it's just ineffective. So next we have Charles Dawes. Dawes, he created the Dawes Plan, which he won a Nobel Peace Prize for, which paid reparations. Europe after World War One. But he actually took a nap instead of breaking the tie, which is a strong VP duty. He didn't really execute that well. I'm going to put him in C tier just because, you know, he's kind of a memester, but, you know, took a nap during a VP tie break, which is pretty, might have just been bad luck, but, you know, C tier. You could plausibly put him in D tier, but that tier is kind of full. Charles Curtis. So he was under Herbert Hoover. He was a Native American origin, first person of color, second oldest VP, first person of color as VP, second oldest as VP, groundbreaking VP, but largely ineffective, as I hate to say it. He agreed with Hoover on bad policies that accelerated the Great Depression. He showed positivity during the Great Depression, even, like trying to give them a false sense of security, which kind of backfired in his face. But, you know, broke a lot of glass ceilings, as they say. I think Hoover was worse than him, if I'm being honest. Good cancels out the bad. C tier. He didn't really do anything good. He just really is just kind of there, you know, Charles Curtis. John Nance Garner. He was FDR's first vice president. He was a strong supporter of the income tax. He hated being vice president, which he compared it to being in a pitcher of warm piss. Not exactly an optimistic view. Clashed with FDR on the New Deal, you know, not very complimentary to FDR, and there's a reason that FDR chose Henry Wallace for his guy at the second term. I am going to put him in the F tier, although, you know, his nickname was Cactus Jack, and he was a strong supporter of the Cactus for Texas state plan when they were voting on that, when he was in the Senate for Texas. So you got to applaud him for being a cactus guy. Maybe he doesn't deserve F, but on the cusp of F and D, I'd say he really wasn't very productive or conducive to bringing us out of the Great Depression. So next we have Henry Wallace, who was chosen after the failure of John Nance Garner. He called for desegregation, racial and gender equality, national health insurance. He was an advisor to FDR and an engineer behind many of the New Deal policies. Guy at the start of World War II, kind of rallied the troops, said, "Oh, we're fighting for freedom from fascism. You know, it's our duty to support the European countries who are suffering to this tyrannical leader." Kind of softer towards the Soviet Union, which I really don't have any opinions on that. There wasn't really that much conflict with the Soviets at that time. They were actually allies for us, so whatever. You know, engineer behind the New Deal, very progressive guy, very active in his presidency, probably the most active to this point, maybe besides John Adams. Um, Empathetic guy. It's a shame that he was kicked out by his party for being too progressive. I'm gonna put him in the S tier. I like him a lot. One of my favorites, Henry Wallace. Um, Harry Truman is next. So Harry Truman was there for literally 3 months. Did literally nothing. But he was handpicked by his party. They're like, oh yeah, FDR's on the way out. Oh yeah, how about we have you have this guy that we like a lot as your VP? Because they knew he was gonna become president, and that the FDR legacy dynasty was gonna continue. Since he really didn't do anything, I like him as president. I think he was a good guy. I'm gonna put him at a D tier. Why not? I mean, he really didn't do anything. William Henry Harrison, he didn't really do anything as president. I put him in D tier. So let's put him as a VP in D tier. Why not? So next we have Alben Barkley. Alben Barkley was the VP under Harry Truman. Alben Barkley lowered tariffs to support free trade. Alben Barkley was the oldest VP. Alben Barkley supported neutrality in World War I. He disagreed with Truman on many things, but they worked it out between the two of them. I'm gonna put Alben Barkley in B tier. Next we have Richard Nixon, who was a below average president but an above average VP. As Eisenhower gave him lots of duties, gave him lots of responsibilities. A bit tougher on international policy or Soviet Union than Ike was. But made a lot of decisions and balanced him well. A little bit of harmful rhetoric there. Foreign policy peacefulness under Eisenhower. Chaired the Security Council meetings. Did a lot of stuff. Saw the VP as an opportunity to make a good name for himself. When Ike had a heart attack, he didn't try to do a power grab, much like Chester Arthur. Showed them that he was a man of integrity, at least at the time. I like him a lot as a VP, and I am going to put him in the B tier. He could go in the A tier. You could plausibly put him in the A tier as a VP. I like him as a VP. He's a good VP. Next we have Harold Truman. No, we already did Harold Truman. Nixon, good guy. I like him. So next we have LBJ, or as they say, Lyndon B. Johnson. He was a strong civil rights leader. Not leader of civil rights, strong civil rights advocate, as they say, in the Senate and as a vice president. Strong progressive voice behind the Kennedy administration. Everything that Kennedy did as a progressive was backed strongly by LBJ. Since Kennedy, he was from the conservative wing of the Democratic Party. LBJ was from the progressive wing. LBJ was a mean guy. He was very not very corrupt, but you could tell he would scare people into deals. Not very couth around foreign leaders. We didn't really know that though at the time. Didn't have much respect for either JFK or especially not RFK. They tangled a lot, and I really like RFK. I think he was the perfect balance between JFK and LBJ. He was the heart of the Kennedy administration. RFK is my guy. So I wouldn't really appreciate that he tangled with him, but passing legislation strongly effective and ahead of many committees under the JFK administration. I'm going to put them up with Tricky Dick. In the B tier as a VP. As a senator, I would put him in the A tier. I like him because he passed the Civil Rights Act and did all that stuff. Great at rallying people. He turned a little bit more aggressive once he was a VP, and then as a president, he just boom on his way down. That was a really bad whistle. Why did I do that? Whew, bow. Yeah, that's what I meant. So next we come to Hubert Humphrey, and Hubert Humphrey was the VP under LBJ, and Hubert Humphrey was, much like LBJ, a strong supporter of Vietnam. A pro civil rights guy, pro Great Society guy. Not much of that happened under LBJ, though. Not much traction was gained on those two things under LBJ, except for Medicare and Medicaid, because the Vietnam War was raging, and he was a strong supporter of that, refused to criticize it, and actually escalated it. So Hubert Humphrey did some great things, but he also did some bad things, so I'm going to put him in C tier, kind of balance it out, you know? So next we have Gerald Ford, and the thing about Gerald Ford is he pardoned Nixon, but he did his duty as VP, I think, even though he had some gaffes and missteps. He's criticized for pardoning Nixon, but I think it showed that, he's doing his duty, he's staying loyal, while also showing the people that the presidency is not as, it still is a good position, and it can't be as corrupt as it seems. He didn't really do that much in his last few times, because he came right after Spiro Agnew. But yeah, Gerald Ford, B tier. And I didn't even realize, but I did Gerald Ford before Spiro Agnew. Spiro Agnew came before Gerald Ford, and that's the reason Gerald Ford became picked as the vice president, because Spiro Agnew was resigned. I don't know if he got shipped off to prison, but he, set the tone for the whole Nixon administration of corruption, and, he was a very corrupt guy, resigned due to debts, corrupt deals, bribery, and extortion and fraud. I think he was a terrible VP, and really one of the most corrupt figures in American history. I am going to put him down in the F tier. So then now we have Nelson Rockefeller, and he was, from the Rockefeller family, a very rich family, old money elitist kind of guy. Strong, kind of interventionist, Kissinger supporter. Didn't hardly do anything in the Senate under Gerald Ford, which may be because Gerald Ford didn't really have that much time in office. He was dropped by the GOP after his first term. Not that much. About Nelson Rockefeller, that's very good. But he didn't really do anything too bad. D tier. Walter Mondale. He campaigned for the nuclear freeze under Jimmy Carter. Engineer, much like Henry Wallace, about much of Jimmy Carter's views. The economy, he had his own ways, and he gave the VP position a lot more power, much like Henry Wallace did. He used it as an opportunity to help others. He didn't scoff at it, much like LBJ did. He saw it as a way to, do something and make a move. And I believe the Carter administration might have gone much worse if they didn't have Walter Mondale behind it, supporting nuclear freeze and, deregulation and equal rights, reduction of debt, national debt. He sat in on lunches, very hands-on in the Carter administration. Architect behind foreign policy under Carter and the peace talks, that whole thing. Walter Mondale, A or S tier. I think I'm going to put him in the S tier because it's looking a little lonely up there. And Walter Mondale, second greatest vice president in American history, what can I say? Gave a lot more power, and, I'm not sure how great he would have been as a president, but great VP. So next we have George H.W. Bush, and he was under Ronald Reagan, moderate to Reagan's very right position. Head advisor to Reagan, good relations with Democrats, kind of continued the Mondale standard of involvement with the president, deregulation while also being anti-drug. I don't agree with a lot of what H.W. said at his VP, but he's a moderate guy. Head advisor to Reagan, I like how he didn't really do anything bad during his VP. Supported some iffy deals, iffy bills. I like him better than Reagan, though. I'm going to put him in the B tier. So next we have Dan Quayle. So, Dan Quayle, potato. He misspelled potato and spelled it like potato, as in the foot toe. Old-fashioned views, not in touch with American society. Chicken hawk, as they say. where he avoided the draft, but then is supporting all these, like, the Iraq War and all these, like, invade Cuba, not invade Cuba, invade Central American countries with the Contras, and all this stuff, invade invade Central American countries and overthrow these communist leaders and all this. Um, you know, Whereas, like, dude, you escaped the draft, but now you're a hawk. What? Old-fashioned view is not very strong in the Senate. Actually, he was kind of a strong Senate guy. Not with Senate, but, like, he's a good advisor to HW, which is the reason that I'm not putting him in F tier. Strong advisor to HW. Did his duties for the first part. I just think his ideology and whole personality is rather repulsive to me. But maybe he's lightened up in recent years. I don't know. He seems like a nicer guy. He never seemed mean, like Spiro Agnew. Anyway, so now we have Al Gore. More progressive voice under the Clinton administration. Very strong Mondale kind of guy. Sat in on meetings and that kind of thing. Very in touch. Moderate-ish on foreign policy. Status quo kind of neoliberal guy, but I appreciate his gumption and his will to serve under the Clinton administration and be a strong advisor. Just, he would be in B tier normally if, like, I was just a centrist, but since I agree with him a little bit more than the other guys in the B tier, I'm going to put him in A tier, just because the A tier is looking a little sad. Could go in the B tier too, plausibly, or even the C tier if you wanted to. Dick Cheney. So he was the engineer behind many invasions on privacy during the W. Bush administration. I highly dislike him. I think he was in it for his own personal game and power. Much like Dan Quayle, he was a chicken hawk, avoided the draft, and then was like, we need to bomb the bejeezers out of the Middle East. Patriot Act, not a lot of respect. Basically took charge during the W. Bush administration. W. Bush didn't make a lot of decisions. It was just Cheney. 9/11, strange deals, is crony capitalism. Bailing out banks, that whole thing. He had a lot of power during the VP administration, but, not in a constructive way. And actually in a way which hurt our country and our reputation on the foreign front. So I am going to put him in the F tier, because George W. Bush, I would put maybe in the, I'd put him in the F tier, but I think the reason he's in the F tier is because of Dick Cheney, and he's one of the worst vice presidents in history, in my opinion. Now, yes, he was a strong guy. He was involved, but I highly disagree with a lot of what he did. And how we basically just, like, took charge and said, okay, I'm in power now, and we're like, what? We didn't even elect you. We elected George W. Bush. Why are you taking charge? Overstepped his limits with Iraq War #2 and that whole thing. Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a pragmatic guy as VP. He rallied Republicans and Democrats together. I really don't know about Joe Biden. He held interventionist views with the Middle East, kind of neoliberally. Oh, yes, we're left, but we're actually going to bomb the bejesus out of the Middle East again. And, oh, yes, we're left, but, banks ain't that bad. And, oh, yeah, we support Obamacare, but then again, not really. So, Joe Biden, he had some gaffes during his presidency, but, he could bring people together, and, he was faithful to his duties. So I'm going to put him in the C tier. And lastly, we have Mike Pence. And Mike Pence, I've thought about this a lot, because when he was first elected, I thought, Mike Pence, what an idiot. I disagree with almost every single thing that comes out of his mouth, policy-wise. But the more I think about it, putting his politics aside, for the first entire 3 years of his under Trump. He was largely didn't do anything. Trump basically was a main voice. He was just like, shut up, Pence. I just like got you on my team so I could get the more traditional conservative voters, right? Mike Pence, I believe, didn't like Trump that much, but he was at least loyal to him. Trump basically, with the insurrection, that whole thing, there were supporters of Trump outside. One of the duties of the VP is to certify the presidential election, basically, the results of the presidential election, which said that Joe Biden was elected, right? And Mike Pence, being on Trump's team, Trump said they better not certify it, and basically left Mike Pence out to dry. And Mike Pence easily, with all this pressure from half of the Republican Party and Donald Trump and all these protesters outside who were not even protesters, they were a mob, and they were throwing bricks and stuff. They were trying to overtake the Congress, and they were trying to overtake the Capitol, and they basically had gallows outside, and they were chanting "Hang Pence, hang Pence," and yet Mike Pence certified the vote certified the decision to have Joe Biden be the next president, because he stuck to his conscience and the duty of the presidency, and went against Trump, who, I think he realized that this is coming into a threatening authoritarian regime, and I am going to stick to my guns, and stick to my guns. I am going to, stick to what I believe in, and stick to the Constitution and the duties of the VP. And, the evidence says that Joe Biden got elected. There's people outside calling for my death, but I'm still going to certify Joe Biden's election. And I have a lot of respect for Mike Pence for that. I respect him very much for that. His dealing with COVID was meh. Trump left him in charge of that. Basically everything that Trump didn't want to deal with during his presidency, he's like, oh, that's Pence. And, Pence kind of stumbled over a lot of it. Wasn't that great with it. I disagree with him on a lot of his policies. But I feel like his handling of the insurrection and that whole thing was really admirable, as he did not give in to the pestering from his fellow Republicans and certify the vote. If Pence bent to that and let all the rioting outside and the Republicans who were saying that he was a traitor and Trump hanging him out to dry, if he would have crumbled under that pressure, we would still have Trump as president, I believe. Because if he could have chosen not to certify that vote, and I have a lot of respect for Mike Pence for that. So I could put him in C tier. I could have put him in B tier. There wasn't really anything admirable that he did. It was just sticking to his guns. But I'm gonna at the top of C tier, because I have respect for him for doing what he did and not letting the rest of the Republican Party get to his head and certifying that final vote that made Joe Biden president. So, yeah, this is my final ranking. Opinions in the comments as always. Thank you for watching. Consider liking and subscribing. So,